And that's why I believe in you, because that is the greatest purpose. It's to love. Honest. It sounds corny, whatever you want to say. I don't care. I love people because there is freedom and power in loving people.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we have the crazy belief that creating success and happiness is a daily conscious effort, which is why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week. I'm your host, Brandon Beecham, and each and every Wednesday, you can tune in to hear me interview a different consciousness changemaker that is out there working tirelessly to help catalyze change and expand awareness all across Spaceship Earth. On the other 4 weekdays, you can tune in to myself and my co-host, Dalian, giving interpretations of our favorite thought-provoking quotes, sharing a bit of inspiring or mysterious news, taking questions from the audience, and digging into any other mind-expansive topics that will help keep your soul fed by tuning you into positive vibrations on a regular basis. And you guys have heard me say that if I ever run ads on the show, it will only be with a company that I fully support because I believe their intention is to make a positive difference in the world. Well, I'm pleased to announce that day has arrived and that this episode of the Positive Head Podcast is being brought to you thanks to the support of Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's interview episode, I have Anita Wing Lee here with me on the show. Anita is a world traveler, meditation teacher, and founder of Global Meditation Scope, which recently hosted the world's largest creative meditation event on the popular live streaming app Periscope. Hey there, Anita. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So to jump right in, first question I love to ask. You're in an elevator. You have 10 floors to answer. The person next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" What do you say?
Hey, I'm Anita Wing Lee. I help people find the extraordinary within themselves and outside of themselves in the world by traveling the world, and at the same time by learning how to find inner peace. So I share my journey authentically with a lot of grit and rawness on Periscope, the live streaming app, as I share my journey of just being someone committed to living my highest purpose and then empowering other people to do the same.
Ah, wow. That's a good answer. A lot of times people take about the first 3 floors, they're not even sure what to say. You're like on it. So tell me a little bit, about Global Meditation Scope. What is that? How'd you get started?
Yeah, so Global Meditation Scope is a live streaming meditation event that I put together once or twice a year. And it was actually born by accident when I just started on Periscope and I started leading guided meditations. But most recently, when we just had the event, we had 150 broadcasters from across many genres: music, dance, art, traditional, spirituality, and health and wellness. People who traditionally lead meditations, and then people who are completely outside of that as well. And it's all about making meditation more accessible for people and inviting them along on this journey. Because it's all live streamed, people are excited to tune in, and they learn many, many different styles. And they also find this incredible community on Periscope as well. So the event that we just did reached over 75,000 live viewers.
Wow.
And it's a big undertaking to put together, but it honestly just started from a little idea back in one of my own Periscopes a couple months ago, I think 10 months ago. And it was, I just thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a lot of people lead meditations on the same day? And bit by bit, it's continued to grow and empower a lot of new Periscopers as well. So it's sort of really my sacred service to the world. One of the things I do.
That's awesome. So just so I understand, so 150 other individuals like yourself, all online on Periscope. And for those who don't know, Periscope is the live streaming app. I think Twitter recently acquired Periscope, if I'm not mistaken. That's just a little tidbit. I don't guess that matters.
Twitter. It was App of the Year in 2015. It's one of the largest live streaming platforms.
Right. And so 150 people like yourself who are conducting these various types of, guided meditations all get together at one time and then all somehow connect or is it just sort of a plan to all do your thing simultaneously? Is there a way that, like a string that connects all of them for the 75,000?
This time we did it. It was a 3-day event, and people had between 30 minutes to an hour to do their session. And we have a big schedule over at globalmeditationscope.com. If people are interested, they can still sign up there and get the replays and still access a lot of those meditations if they're interesed. So,
cool.
It's kind of, I think of it, I tell people it's like a retreat for your soul, filled with classes and good community, except it's all entirely free and all on your phone through Periscope.
Yeah, right. So it's like a virtual retreat, and it's like, here's a smorgasbord of different meditations. Which one do you want? Choose and show up there if you want to catch it live, or you can, of course, get the recorded version after the fact on your site.
Exactly.
Okay. Very cool. Very, very cool. I love that. It's a great idea. And now, for you personally, have you been meditating a long time?
I have been meditating probably 5 years. So depending on who you ask, that's long or that's short. But my own journey just started with when I first got introduced to yoga, and I just started on YouTube and watching videos online. And I think it's one of those at first, like, you don't really know what you're doing. You hear about it and like, okay, I think this will help. And then you start finding that you have these like spaces in your mind where you don't get as stressed, you don't get as angry. You have, you're more creative. And then bit by bit, I just like continued to practice it. And so my journey of becoming sort of a meditation leader and teacher on Periscope was really by accident. I got on the platform. I had always wanted to have a more disciplined meditation practice, and I thought it would be cool to start leading guided meditations in the morning. So I just started, and I put it in my little bio on, in the app. And because I put it there, I had to do it. So I started, and I thought it would be cool to have like 100 live viewers on at a time doing that, leading and being a part of the meditation. I thought it would take a lot longer. Within 3 weeks, I was having 100 live viewers at a time in my guided meditations. And then from there, I just kept running with it and empowering other people to also use the app as a tool to spread and introduce more people to meditation.
Right. Yeah, that's, I think you hit on a very key point there. It's like empowering other people to sort of do what you're trying to do is, I always say, is the fastest way to get what you want is to give it away to someone else. And so I think you're on to something really good. It's like, how do I help others? How do I empower others? And then you end up being empowered sort of as a secondary attribute of that good deed of your intention to actually do something for others. And so I think that's really, really awesome. And it sounds like it's grown very quickly in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's like the universe gives you signs for something, whether it's like a green light or red light. And for me, I definitely felt like I got the green light because I've never been much of a social media influencer or guru. I'd been on Twitter for like 3 years, didn't really know how to use it. And I had 600 followers after 3 years. But when I got on Periscope, very quickly, I grew a community and it was fun for me and it was easy. So for me, it happened naturally, and I think it actually comes through the practice of what meditation is all about, which is learning to find your center, learning to find your truth in the midst of all the chaos that in the world throws at you, whether it's the fear, whether it's the desire, whether it's the ego. I think it's beautiful now that meditation is a part of my quote unquote brand. because at the end of the day, it's really just a part of my daily life and my practice and who I want to be in the world. Because I feel like without my meditation practice, it's so easy to get caught up back into, you know, wanting what other people have, or building your business, or building your follower count, all that stuff. And at the end of the day, it's like, we're just meditating here. And everyone comes to meditation with their own thoughts of why they need it or why they should try it at the beginning. But I love the practice, and I feel like really lucky and blessed to be able to get to use the platform to help people this way. And like you said, Brandon, as you know, if you really want to keep something for yourself, the best way is to give it away, or as it says in a lot of spiritual traditions, to give is to receive. And so for me, I find that as I give meditations and as I lead them, at the end of the day, no one else is going to attend every single one of my meditations, but I'm the one who actually gets to experience all of them. And they work on me just as much as they work on other people. And so that practice of, you know, one of the reasons I would say I meditate is to dissolve the ego, to dissolve that part of us that is scared and afraid and is always grasping for more. So it's a beautiful practice that I think can help anyone, whether you're looking for more abundance, if you want to make, even if you just want to make more money, or you're looking for more creativity. Or most people, I think, come to it for less stress. It'll do its thing. It'll do its thing on you. Yeah. You don't have to know why or how, but it'll work.
Right. Yeah. Something you said made me think of a statement I heard. I don't know if you're familiar with the teacher Osho, but Osho, I'm paraphrasing, I read this a long time ago, but it resonated with me. He's like, if, you know, everyone should meditate 20 minutes a day. If you're too busy, then you should meditate an hour. And it's one of those things where, you know, I think it's very important to make the time. People, it's very easy to get so caught up in like the hustle bustle of life, and by carving out that time, it sounds like you've come up with a great way to sort of, as you said, it forced you to do it, right? And you probably found all other areas of your life by now having this regimented, you know, practice where other people are sort of depending on you. You've probably found, in a sense, it's created more time. It's like, I have a friend, he always says, you know, he's a master of bending time and space. You know, everything's sort of illusory. It's like, if you're getting into that zone, that meditative zone, well, you know, how does it affect your world? And I definitely think it can affect where it seems like, you know, sort of you have more time to even do things, and more, you know, you're sort of bending time and space, as he would talk about. And I think that's a sort of an interesting perspective to think about.
Yeah, I love that analogy of bending time and space, because I think one of the chronic illnesses of our time, especially in Western society, is this fixation with faster, right? We need everything, and we need more of it, and it needs to work faster, more data, more speed, and faster promotion, more money. And even me, it's funny because I've realized that I've been traveling a lot. So depending on where I live, I couch surf with a lot of other people. I've chosen a very minimalist lifestyle that allows me to do that. Recently I've been in a place where the clock is always ticking. And it's a really big clock on the wall. And I've actually noticed that it makes me look at it more, and I hear it, and I'm aware of it. And then also the person's house that I'm staying at, they work a 9-to-5, whereas I'm an online creator, so I make my own schedule. But because that person works a 9-to-5, and I'm sort of like plugged into that space all the time, it makes me so much more aware of it. And I'm like, and I think to myself, you know, when it's 2, it's like, okay, I've got 3 more hours of focus, something like that. So it's really interesting, because I think meditation, it won't happen overnight, but it's, if you want it and you realize the insanity of how much we are bound by schedules and time and getting things done, meditation, or especially in the mindfulness world, they call it mindfulness. It helps you create space in your life and in your psyche, I would say, because you're not you're not looking at your clock every 20 minutes and like rushing to a meeting with only 3 minutes to spare. Instead, you just live and time flows. And it's a beautiful thing when you can find those pockets in your life. And it's a journey that I'm on as well. Like, I think I can feel that I'm like, okay, I'm going to plan for a mini sabbatical. I'm going to be going to India later this year. And I find myself keep thinking of it. And I realize that practice of like looking forward to it or worrying about it, that is actually, that's the work. It's not about like, okay, wait till I go to India. It's actually about like, okay, can you just live in the present now? Yeah. And then, in those like micro meditations, whether it's like stopping to take a deep breath and, working on my computer mindfully instead of getting worked up until I have 20 tabs open. And then I'm like, whoa, what am I doing? So it's that daily practice of not necessarily like trying to slow down, but actually just trying to be aware of everything that you're doing and like learning to find the joy in every moment of your life.
Yeah. That's the key, I would say. I have quite a few friends I'm pretty tied in and active in the transformational festival world and community. And so you get a lot of these people that are like, van life, living out of their vans. They're making them into these nice sort of mobile homes of sorts. And they're just, I know so many people and they're not living that. They've unplugged from that 9-to-5 world, and sort of a lot of them face challenges of, from time to time, but it's always an adventure. Their life is like literally, whatever's in flow, and you'll hear it all the time. Well, if it's in flow, then this, if it's in flow, then that. And it's just kind of letting the wind take you where it will and following the signs as you talked about. And it is a different approach, and I just see more and more people doing it, and it seems like you've done a lot of that sort of thing. And where I've always sort of battled and with this myself, because I can really see the intelligence in this sort of approach, right? It's always been tough for me because I've had this vision of myself of creating a lot of abundance to do projects with. So it's like, okay, well, I need to sort of buckle down for some period of time. And it's been an interesting journey because, I sort of went that path and a 5-year path, and I got to this big buyout for my company. And then, an asteroid hit the company within hours of getting the buyout. It was like something out of a movie, like, oh, here's a ton of money. Oh, never mind. Here's a problem that blew the whole thing up. And now I'm at this point where it's sort of like, okay, now what to do? And it's sort of like I'm doing a reboot, and I've got my hands in multiple projects that keep me very, very busy, right? But then I see these friends who are just like, flowing with the breeze, and they're just always, on this, not always, but a lot of times in this very heightened state energetically. And so it's been an interesting theme in my own life recently. Like, am I doing the right thing based off, for myself, really? And I think at the end of the day, we all have our own unique paths. And, for me, it may be a path of my life path. My soul contract is I need to go through some of this more regimented, life, I guess, segments or time periods of time in order to sort of manifest my vision, where other people, it's like, they have a different, everyone has their own unique path. But it's, I'm very intrigued by people who sort of, like you said, you couch surf, I know you also have, you're a big travel advocate, and you have, ways you teach people, right? How to do so for free or even get paid. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yes, this is a really interesting area for me. And just by the way, I totally resonated with everything that you said, Brandon, because the funny thing is, even though I travel, I couch surf, I haven't, it's almost like I haven't quite invested in it as much as someone, for example, who actually owns a van.
Right. Because, you're not full van life yet.
Yeah, I'm not quite, I don't actually have a van, because the funny thing is, I find even in my own journey, and this is what, keeps me awake and keeps me always trying to check in with my intuition, is it wouldn't necessarily be that hard to stop somewhere and get a job. And because we live in a world that actually a lot of the hosts that I live with are like, that's their default. It's something that I think about, but that's where, you know, it comes back to like, okay, what is actually my path?
Right.
But so this aspect of travel is interesting because I've dabbled with taking it out of my website and out of my messaging and out of what I share in the world for like many times. I've attempted to do this and then it just keeps kind of coming back and it comes around. And then I was in Canada for a year and a half while I really learned to build up my online platform. And then it just, you know, certain things happened and things shifted and I could tell it was just time to go. It was time to hit the road. So I did.
Right.
So for the past 6 months, this is what I've been doing. So I've been talking about it a bit more. And that's why I actually introduced myself at the beginning as, you know, one of the things I feel like is my life purpose would be to help people find the extraordinary within and without. Because when I look back on my own journey, I traveled before I meditated, and travel was the thing that showed me. Travel was the thing that began to wake me up, really. It made me realize that, like, okay, there must be something bigger here because, you know, I was, for example, when I was 20, I was in Africa and I ended up backpacking on my own for 3 weeks, which if you had told me I was going to do that, I'd be like, no, that's really not a good idea because all I heard about, all I knew of Africa was all the stuff that's on TV, you know, with like the starving children and war and all this stuff.
Right.
But it was like having experiences where I realized I could actually disappear off of the face of the earth. It would take anyone in my family at least weeks to realize I'm gone and then to try to find me. And then also just to meet people in parts of the world that you would never meet if you stayed in the paradigm at home.
Right.
So that process of like travel and just getting out of the paradigm of that like 9 to 5, go to university, get a job, get a car, get a house life was what began to show me that like, okay, there must be another way. And as I discovered more people who were carving their own path, like for example, the van life people are a really good example. You're not going to find van life people at the office or at the gym.
Right.
Like,
Definitely
you're
not.
going to find the van life people who are like, they're climbing the mountains or they're, you know, in the middle of the desert in Africa and they're having a good time. So
yeah, as my friend would say it, he's like, you're going to see them driving their significance vehicles to work. And I'm driving to work so I can pay for my significance vehicle. See how significant I am with this very fancy car. You know, he jokingly says this.
Oh, I love that. My significance vehicle.
Yeah.
So that process of travel, like when I look back, I tried to like cut it out of my messaging because for a while I was like, there shouldn't say there's too many, but there's a certain kind of travel blogger and travel messaging out there that's all about the freedom lifestyle, right? Like quit your 9 to 5, travel the world, see the world, be free. And that's kind of a lower consciousness way of talking about travel. And I you know, there was a time where I played that game too, because it was what was floating out in the world. But I start to realize now that like I travel now, not because I need to get to another better destination. I travel because I recognize that it's part of my path. Like I must have just been born with a gypsy soul. You know, I don't really have any attachment to like, you know, some people are more grounded. Some people genuinely like to stay in one place more. But for those people that I just trust that like, okay, if this is my part of my path and part of the kind of people that the universe will bring to me are also people who resonate with that energy of travel and movement and seeing something new. And in my own journey, I've also realized that travel, to break it down, it's really simple. Like with anyone who says they want to travel, it's because their soul is telling them that they need to get out of the current paradigm that they're in and see something else. Like that's it, right? That desire to travel, even if I'm not aware of it, it's just like, there's a part of me that knows that like, maybe it's not normal to work 9 to 5. Maybe we made that stuff up. It's, you know, but it's only when you go to Italy, for example, you stay there long enough to be like, wait, everyone closes their shop from 3 to 6 and has a siesta. And like, that's normal, right? And like, I'm actually enjoying my life and maybe I make less money. Maybe they make less money, but like, maybe they eat more pasta, but it seems like they're happier. And so
Right.
for me, like physical travel is part of that process of unwinding yourself from the programming of the world so that you can begin to discover like your path as a soul in the world. And so that's why I've kept it. But that's why I also love that meditation is now a part of what I do. Because when I started out online, I didn't talk about meditation. But now I love it because it helps me remind people that I can be like, listen, if travel is a part of your path, I can help you do that too, because I've done it. You know, there are like, sometimes it helps to actually have practical tips, like
Sure.
hearing about van life people and realizing the budget wise that actually I could do that myself. But then on the flip side, like sometimes I catch people through travel and then I'm like, by the way, life's not better in Bali. Like it's all your state of mind. Want to try meditation. So I get to provide people both of those angles depending on where they are in their journey.
Yeah. Inner journeys and outer journeys, right?
Exactly.
So what are some tips that you would give to someone who wants to get out there and see the world and experience and find themselves, you know, and have never stepped out of the paradigm? Where would they begin?
This is an awesome question, because the question I've been getting a lot recently, and the block that I see in people is just realizing that is thinking that they don't have the money. And then that usually ties them to a job or their current way of making a living. And then, you know, and it just stops at that, right? There's like, like I can't do it because I don't have the money. And you're young, you're in your 20s and, you know, blah, blah, blah. I've got kids in house, all that stuff. And not to discount other people's life situations, but as a general rule of thumb, the part of the reason why I went back to traveling is I realized that if I stayed in Canada, it would cost me more to rent a place, you know, potentially pay for transportation to a job and food and all that stuff than if I actually kept traveling. It is a known fact. You can very easily Google it that you can travel the world for about $1,500 a month. $1,000 is a bit of a tighter budget depending on where you are. But you know, $1,500 a month will take you across South America and it will take you across India. And so if you've ever wanted to do that, and you're making close to that or a variation of that, like I like to bring this up because it helps people just realize that, like, wait, I could actually go next month if I wanted to. Right. Maybe you have to, you know, you could rent your place out. You could cut down, you know, cancel your Netflix, like put your phone bill on hold, all these
Tell
things.
your boss that you've got a horrible illness that you're not going to recover for 30 days.
Like you've got to go somewhere and get some healing. Right. And so this is also why I'm passionate about meditation, because it really is. It's the thoughts in our head that stop us from doing what we want to do. So that would be my first thing, is just be like, if you've ever wondered about money, and look at your actual budget, think about how much you actually spend. And then get really clear on what you actually want in your life. You know, because I can give practical tips, like I mentioned, like put your house on Airbnb if you have a house. Like that in itself can fund your entire travels. There are tons of things that you can do. There's things like woofing, which is worldwide organic farms, or workaways that you can do where you can actually, like you work for someone 4 hours a day or 5 hours a day in exchange for accommodations and food. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually travel cheap, travel on a budget, and then obviously like get paid to travel is another thing that I talk about, like turning the skills that you have into different gigs around the world where you can get paid for it. And if anyone is interested, there's a little workbook. It's totally free. It goes through 7 steps on how to get paid to travel. But I think, like,
where is that? That's on your website, right?
Yeah, that's on my website at anitawingley.com. Just my name.com.
Cool.
The thing that I find that because the thing is, the practical tips, technically they're a Google search away. You can find plenty of those. But I think what stops people from ever really exploring it is like they've totally lost touch with what they actually really wanted in life. Because if you're listening to this and there's a part of you that, you know, thought this was a meditation broadcast and now you're like, whoa, travel. And you're excited.
Inner travel, outer travel. Hey, you know what? The listeners always know they don't know what they're going to get. So.
No, it's awesome. So, and like, if there's that part of you that's excited about this now, the only reason that you haven't done it yet or haven't like started to take steps is because I see a lot of people lose touch of what they actually really want. So for example, recently I had, they settle and they just like, they don't actually let their vision of their life blossom forth. Like for me, as I mentioned, I was in Canada for a bit and I always knew that I was going to hit the road again. And, you know, but I kept that perspective. So like, for example, I didn't buy a lot of stuff. I never was like, oh, I need another bed or another furniture. Minimalism is something I love to talk about, but like don't buy stuff that you can't carry with you, right? Like keeping these things in mind, like people don't do them because they get caught up in being like, actually, I need another IKEA table. And a good example I can give you of this is recently someone was asking me about whether or not it'd be a good idea for them to be a flight attendant as a way to travel the world. Which is really common because I'm sure there's a lot of people, I used to want to be a flight attendant when I was younger.
Sure.
But I remember why I stopped wanting to be a flight attendant when I realized that you don't actually have that nice of a lifestyle. You're in hotels a lot of time. When you're first starting out, you tend to do the less glamorous routes, you know, like just Cleveland to Dallas, Texas. Right. You just do that over again for months and months.
Well, 100 times. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so then that was like, I don't actually want that lifestyle. What do I really want? I want to travel the world. I want to experience new cultures. I want to do good. I want to work with cool businesses. So when I asked this lady and I got to the heart of it, it was the same thing for her. I was like, would you rather travel the world or actually just do what you love on a day-to-day basis? And she said, I would rather do what I love on a day-to-day basis. So for each person, it's like, take some time, whether it's journal or just, you know, look at your life. And I think writing it out as a list is one of the best things. But like, what would you actually like to be doing with your time on a day-to-day basis? You know, how would you like to be spending your days? With who? Like, with what kind of people? Right. And then you can look at like your relationships, your possessions, your time and transportation, how you actually make your money. Like, look at all of these things. And it's almost like one thing at a time, you can begin to change your life, like change an aspect of your life so that you're more ready to travel. Because in my own experience, like when it's time for you to travel, the universe will actually like give you a sign. I don't recommend pushing it. Like, I don't think the average person is going to listen to this and like hand in their 2 weeks notice right after. It's going to happen.
I bet you someone out there will be inspired. You know, it's like, that's a really good point that you make. $1,500. It's like, okay, so what is that? Like $18,000 a year. You know, there's people out there who will work 6 months, you save that money, then go travel the other 6 months. I mean, that sort of thing is within reach for almost anyone who's willing to really focus on it. So it's it definitely puts it in a perspective that I think makes it realistic for people. And so I think it's really great that you're sort of helping to show people, shine a light on some of the things that they can do. Yeah, exactly. And I think the more that you begin to explore it, you'll find more and more stories. Like, me personally, I when I started out, I didn't know that many people who were doing it quite the way that I was doing it. I knew a lot of people who were trying to, you know, sell the lifestyle, but doing it in like a conscious way is important to me. So I think the more that you explore this and you sort of put it out there that you actually want to set yourself free from a job, or, you know, you whether even if like you just want to be, you would love to just like travel the world and lead meditations online like I do. Like, you'll have your own path of doing it, but as long as you keep that vision, it will come to pass bit by bit. Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where, you know, fortune favors the bold. So, you know, being willing to sort of step off the edge and put yourself out there. You know, I already said one quote by Osho, so might as well throw in another. and I'm paraphrasing again. He's somewhere that I read, and this is years ago as well, so I might be getting it slightly off, but to this effect, he said, security is death. Where you really find the adventure in life is in the unknown. And so many times we reach for the opposite, security. And really, you're never secure. It can all be taken away in a moment, in a flash. So putting yourself out there and allowing, life to sort of flow and take you where you're supposed to go is such an interesting, fascinating way to live. And like I said, I know so many people that are sort of doing that, and the experiences that they have, the adventures that they have. Sure, they have hardships and struggles and difficult situations too, but compared to the average Joe, who's just sort of settled to, drive to the job to pay for the car that gets him to the job to, so he has a place to sleep so he can be rested for the job kind of thing. So many people are on that program, and not saying that it's not, that's not, there's not something there for people too. But I think some way, some form, liberating yourself from the sort of grind, whether it's, in my case, entrepreneurial ventures that can create lots of abundance is my sort of path, and striving. Now, of course, that's not for everyone. Find some way to liberate yourself, even if it's just, I'm going to spend, and that's the beautiful thing about meditation, of course. It really is sort of a inner journey that you can begin to take just sitting in the corner of your room, right, with your eyes closed. So it's just, I think until someone can sort of find that adventure, whether inner or outer, and it really equates to some level of freedom, that's really where we're going to all feel the most alive, right?
Yes, one of my favorite quotes is by Howard Thurman, and it's, "Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive." And one of the other things that I'm passionate about, and I kind of always have been, is this little idea of changing the world. Right. And what can we do as one human being to alleviate the suffering of another, or to be like a good beacon of light in the world? Like, just, we can talk about, legacy is arguable, but at least doing something that makes me feel purposeful in this life. And so one of the things that I've found is, it might not seem like, you might think that you're just becoming a van dweller or couch surfing, or a digital nomad is another word for it. At first we might just think we're doing it for personal gain and because we need to set ourselves free. But in a much bigger, grander scheme, that journey of releasing yourself from material possessions, from consumerism and materialism, is actually part of what the world needs. So this could be another reason. If anyone has ever been interested in activism and social change, and, even things like veganism, it's starting to become more and more clear to me that the minimalist lifestyle and travel is a part of it, because it forces you to be minimalism. You can only travel so long. Like, I think eventually, even if you're into luxury vacations, eventually you will reach a point where, like, life is going to crack you open. Life is going to be like, okay, enough, like 5-star yachts and all that good stuff. Like, you're going to go bankrupt, or something is going to get your attention. That I have no doubt. But that journey, I feel like, of purifying yourself of all of, like, the ego and the consumerism that we live in this world, and just living your light, as they say, right? Living what lights you up and what makes you excited and what makes you happy to be alive is actually really important, because that might not seem like it's making a big difference. But one of the reasons why I also wanted to be on this journey is that I could probably calculate the life that I could have lived, and the amount of money and energy that, like carbon footprint, for example, of a life living in Canada as a, traditional millennial, was working a job and all that stuff. Like, I could actually calculate that out in numbers. I'm not much a numbers person, so maybe one day someone will do that for me. But I could do that, and then I could compare it to the life I have now and my carbon footprint now. Like, I've hardly bought any possessions because they don't fit into my suitcase. And this is a really beautiful thing to me because I just like, people give me gifts and I'm like, this is amazing. And I can't carry it with me, and
I'm going to regift it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that attitude is actually really freeing. And I think that's another reason for people to think about, if you've ever, the whole like recycle bags and all these like little things that sometimes are still like consumerist based. It's like, buy a recyclable bag. Like, okay, I think we have enough recyclable bags. Like, let's rethink this. Like, that practice of clearing your mind and setting yourself free is part of how we change the world bit by bit, because it's, science has already proven that like we can't actually continue to consume fossil fuels and, grow meat at the rate that we do to feed everyone's greed.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful quote that you just stated, because finding your purpose is going to, I always say that, everyone's purpose, their highest purpose, there's going to be some level of serving involved. Mm-hmm. And the reason I believe that is because it gets back to the whole sort of, philosophy that I always talk about on this podcast. And that is, it's all extensions of the same, source. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself. So whatever you're doing to another, in a sense, you're doing to an extension of self, and you'll feel the energetic repercussions of that action. And so I personally believe that it's always in somehow, some way tied to serving others. And that's where we know we get the greatest joy in life anyway, is, so how can I find a way to serve others that makes me come alive as well? And I feel like if you can combine those two things, everyone has some sort of configuration of that within them that I believe is very closely tied to their highest calling, so to speak. So, that's a really great quote that you shared. All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So, needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. You also have on your site, you mentioned Project Soul Fam, and that caught my attention. I didn't have a chance to explore it fully, so I'm curious. It's something that I always talk about as well on the show. Is it's all soul family. Anyone resonating with this, out of all the billion things bombarding us, taking this data, look at this programming. If someone is tuning into this little podcast out of the bazillion things out there, they're, in my opinion, they're soul fam. They're people, on the same, branch of the giant tree that is, the tree of life, right? And on a soul level, they're connecting to this vibration because it's a close connection. So curious, what is that about? What is Project Soul Fam?
Well, first of all, I love that you actually resonate with the term soul fam, because even I've been using it for a while and I've never really actually heard someone else be like, yeah. I've always kind of had to be the first one that's like, yeah, this soul family. Like, we're just, if we're here, if we're connecting in this life out of all of the billions of people that are here, like, it's we're all the same at the end of the day. And again, that's another thing that travel teaches you. So this is actually a perfect segue from what you were talking about, service, because a big question that's at Project Soul Fam, which is the name of the project that I gave to my lifestyle and the way I choose to live my life right now, and chronicling this journey of couch surfing, of living minimally but meaningfully. And so the big question that's on the website is, what would happen if we stopped worrying about money and careers and we woke up every day asking, how can I serve?
Right.
And so it does its work on me, because I'll have times where I think about my money and career and I'm like, wait, no, this is what I started. This is the whole point. Like, instead of worrying about that, how could I actually help someone today?
Right.
And so if I had to sum up what the whole thing is about, it's about living and experimenting with the ethos and the philosophy that giving is living.
Right.
You know, instead of like getting is living, what about giving is living? And part of it started, so with this journey, I've pretty much been couch surfing my way around the world, but not just friends. They're all people that I met on Periscope, the live streaming app. And they were people who followed my journey and who resonated with it and believed in it enough to host me. And so it forces me to challenge myself every day and think about what's the absolute best use of my time and energy so I can reach the largest number of people, or also reach people in the most meaningful way. Yeah. And the interesting thing about this is the answer isn't always clear. It's not just like, do this. You know, sometimes it's like, well, maybe it actually would have been more practical for me to like stay put in a place and put something together. Like Global Meditation Scope, in a sense, is a huge act of sacred service. Like, I spent a good 5 to 6 weeks working on it full time, to the point where I was like, I need to stop, drop, and meditate. But, you know, and that one was one thing where there was no particular financial model behind it. I was just like, this will help a lot of people. Let's put it together. Sure. And you know, there have been times where the journey has really changed me. On the website, it says, on the website, if you want to check it out, it's linked from my main website, which is anitawingley.com. But you can also check out projectsoulfem.com. I call it a year-long project. And I say it's kind of an experiment. It's like, well, what's going to happen at the end of the year? If I actually spend every day of this year asking, how can I serve and how can I help? What will happen? And, but there have been points in this journey where, like, you know, and in my soul, I know that it's not a year-long project. In a sense, I actually say that for everyone else who's like, what? You can't really do this. You're just going to get a job afterwards. Because I know I'm not, like, I don't think it's in my soul contract, in my destiny to like be someone who works in a job in that traditional sense. Right. But it's really a whittling away of your own ego. And for me, I feel like it's part of the journey of having to go through this experience so that I can become the greatest, most generous, most pure version of myself. And the
greatest and grandest version.
Yes, exactly. And I love, Brandon, how you mentioned earlier that, like, you know, for some people, some things happen to them. It seems like it happens fast, right? Like within a year, they make $1 million online or something like that, right? And you could try to do everything that they do, and it would take you 5 years, or you would never get it. You would, like, you know, it would end up going all wrong. Right. But so for me, I almost feel like there have been parts of this journey where, like, I wanted to do what other people were doing, you know, to quote unquote, to make money. But I was like, well, what if I thought of this differently? What if I thought of my whole life as just a way to serve? And that whole idea of like following the guidance. So has really taken me. I've been in 6 countries since the beginning of this year. I helped in the refugee crisis in Greece. What else did I do? I've held like so many donation-based meditation workshops around the world. And I try to write as much as possible to chronicle the journey and all the things I learned. But I still feel like it's not perfect. And sometimes I wonder what's the best thing that I could be doing to help people. But it's been a really powerful journey for me. And it's something that I definitely am going to keep doing, because it's really the philosophy of taking the focus off of yourself and just giving and helping. Because the people who really inspire me are people who had like these really deep, entrenched visions for how to do good in the world. People like Mother Teresa and Gandhi and people where it was really not about their own personal safety and security. But in turn, they ended up wielding something that Gary Zukov calls authentic power. Like there's a fake power that comes from money and comes from social media following. And then there's authentic power, which comes from being such a beacon of light in the world that like that people follow you, not because you're pretty or inspiring or all this stuff, but because they're just like, so it blows their mind how much you
the
gave.
way your energy makes them feel, even, it's an energetic thing. If you're moving into a state of pure authenticity and, services your heartfelt intention and all those things, you're drumming up a vibration that is, so powerful. So anyone who's coming into contact with that, directly, indirectly, however, it's being told, the story's being told, you're being felt. So, and then of course you have those people who really just take it to another level. And like you mentioned, people like Mother Teresa and so forth. And, have heard Wayne Dyer talk about being in her presence and what it was like and, how powerful it was. And it's something that any of us have within any of these sort of beacons of light, have within, we all have it within us. I mean, my name means beacon on a hill. So I always think of that like, as I'm trying in my own little way to be a light to the world and help people. It's like, that great light is inside of me. I came into this world with that as part of who I am and coded into my name. And we all have that, it's like anyone, and it's just becoming super authentic and moving into a place of how can I serve? How it's not, I'm not doing this there's some end goal of, how can I spin this into $1 million or how can I, and I've done a lot of that as a serial entrepreneur in my life. It's like so many times I've done projects for the purpose of, monetary gain. Right. And so many times I've had success, but I've had much more failure at it. And this has really been the first project in my life. It's like, could it be monetized at some point? Sure, it could be. It's not my intention. My number one intention is to do this good work, and the reward is getting someone, a message like I received last night, of someone saying, oh my gosh, this has literally saved my life, tuning into this. It's like, there is no greater reward than something like that. And of course, we all have our different ways of serving. And I encourage anyone listening, once again, tune into yourself. You have your own unique path. How can I help others, even if it's one person? It's, someone, it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing either. It's like, start really, really small. How do I be of service today in some small way? And I think anyone will find that it's like addicting, because that's really where the joy comes from in giving.
Yeah, I love that. And there's been so many things that happen. Like there were so many times where I needed something and I just mentioned it to someone and they happened to have the exact thing, like the exact pair of boots that would have been, I couldn't have picked out any better. Sure. And they didn't fit her. And then she ended up getting a pair of boots later, like over and over again, times when I needed stuff and someone had it. And it was like, it was as if they hadn't thrown it away and it was waiting for me. And so that perspective is one that I want to pervade my whole life. That perspective of like, whatever I need will show up when it's time. And if it hasn't yet, it's not because it's not time yet. Right. And
you'll get what you need. Yeah.
Yeah. And because we're so conditioned to live in a world where like, okay, well, why don't I just work a little harder so I can make the money so I can get it? So one of the topics I've been diving more deeply recently is just money. And like, why does money have so much power over us? And why does it command, why is money capable of commanding people who don't even want to work in the job to spend years of their life and the majority of their day essentially suffering and squashing their light so that they can make these numbers, like a lot of times not even tangible money, that get transferred into their account, which is like, this digital thing so that they can buy more. Typically it's to buy more stuff. And so, it's definitely something I've been exploring more. And that's part of one of the things that with Project Soul Femme, I'm not sure what it will evolve into. But in one sense, it's really just a teeny community, myself and, and whoever's landed on the site and signed up for the newsletter, whoever's hosted me around the world, this teeny community of people who are beginning to see life a little bit differently. So, cool. It's the same thing too. People have come up with other ideas for what it could be. But for once, it's something that like there is no strategy from someone else imposed upon it. And it's scary because in a sense, it's easier to just do what everyone else is doing, right? Because that's how they, for example, monetize their podcast or did this or that and, sold this. And it's like, and I feel like the greatest challenge of life is to see what will happen. Because we only find out by doing. And, for me personally, like that's why I love to find stories of people who are doing a similar thing and just hear about their diverse paths to how they continue to live. This whole idea of like making a living versus just like, you know what? You're still living. What do we mean making a living? You're already living. So just keep living. And it's that meditation helps with that in the sense it keeps you present. And so that's the journey. And I definitely want to keep on it because I don't think it happens. It's like 6 months is not enough. It's something that it's almost like years of keeping yourself to the path of being like, no, I'm going to do what's true in my heart, even if the marketing guru or so-and-so says it's not practical. Because the truth is we're only going to find out what will happen if we try. Right? We're not going to find out by like dabbling in it and then going back to the safety net. We're only going to find out if we try. So.
And it's going to be our own unique path. I think you touched on something really important earlier. You're saying, okay, so this person made $1 million online doing this, and this. And it's like, and why isn't that working for me? It's like, well, that's their energy signature. That's their reflection. So it's not just about the physical activity that someone is or isn't taking. Everything is sort of it's an energetic reflection of them. So unless you become them fully, which is not going to happen because you're your own unique emanation of source. So you can be inspired by people. You can certainly take pieces and borrow from, but it's like a musician trying to be another musician. It's impossible. You're never going to be the same because you are completely unique. So it's important to sort of be inspired by others, but find your own way, I believe. So, and something that you also touched on that was really cool was talking about the boots. And it's like sort of serendipity, being in flow, synchronicity, where these things sort of show up. And that's something, of course, that I love to talk about on the show. I ask any guest, and what better time than now, is a story of synchronicity or serendipity or a positive paranormal sort of story that maybe has happened to you either stationary or on the road. Do you have anything like that you would like to share?
Yes, I have two, I guess, because we can start with the first one.
Excellent.
Which was
what's better than one story is two stories.
So the layers of it. So for the listener, Brandon and I actually, we tried to record this broadcast, I think last week. And it didn't work out because of the connection. And you had started with this question of talking about synchronicity, and and I said, well, this is a synchronicity because I just remembered the term today. Because sometimes you know how something will pervade our consciousness and we'll be simmering on it for a while and then we forget, right? We read a new book, we develop a new, and we forget about it. So synchrony is one of the things that obviously I'm aware of it, but I start thinking about money, I'll start thinking about travel, I start thinking about other philosophies, and I forget about it. But the very day that you had mentioned synchronicity, I had just thought of it again that day. And the reason I had just thought of it was because earlier that day, I was listening to an audio on my iPod or on my phone, and then this word and then he starts talking about something. He says the word fortress. And I look up, just I'm waiting at a bus stop. I look up, and right in front of me is a building, an old house. And for some reason, they have the word fortress painted on the outside.
Oh, wow.
And it was like one of those like, oh yeah, okay, I forgot
right.
for a moment. You know, this whole idea of bending time and space and synchronicity and parallel universes and the whole like the universe is not linear anyway.
Right.
So for me, that was one of those, you know, it wasn't one of those like, okay, the universe is trying to give me a sign. It was just like, oh yeah. Like,
yeah, well, sometimes it is. It's just those little things. You'll see the sort of, you know, for example, I was listening to a podcast last night, and it's just a little tie-in as, you know, I'm listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and he's talking about bears and hunting bears and, you know, sort of the morals of this sort of thing. And as he's talking about it and I'm thinking on it deeply, I passed Bear Street. And so it's like, is this, in this case, some great magnificent sign that's this magical story? No, it's just, you know, there's lots of those little tie-ins, kind of like what you're saying with the fortress thing. It's sort of like, oh, okay, I'm seeing this thing on multiple levels in my life simultaneously, which is, you know, just interesting in general and just shows the interconnectedness of things.
Yeah, I love it because it's a big reminder that the universe doesn't work in a linear way. So this whole, you know, a big message that I always try to remind myself of is this, like, we're meant to carve our own path. And I love how you mentioned the idea of like energy signatures. And that's the reason why, because we are so conditioned from like the time that we go to grade school that like, we're just supposed to follow the system, follow the rules, follow this path. Cause that's what human beings do, but that's not the truth.
Yep.
Like human beings don't do that. And so synchronicities are a big fat reminder that there's still so much more about life that we don't understand. And it's like, you know, you can choose how you want to deal with it. But one of my favorite ways to deal with it is like, okay, well, just have fun then. Yeah. Right. Just have fun because like money is not even real. You know, the universe can work miracles and give you $1 million in a day and take it away in a day. But you're still living, right? Like going back to that idea of service, it's like one of the things I remind myself, for example, when I'm less motivated and inspired, is like, as long as I'm still living and breathing and my heart is beating and my consciousness is here, like in this dimension, on this planet at this time, the universe is going to take care of me because that's what it does, right? Again, it's only that conditioning that has told us that we need to fight for survival. We're alone. We're stuck. We need money to be alive, but it's not actually true. And anyone who's traveled for a little bit has had an experience where things didn't go as planned, but it turned out better than you planned. Yeah. And so these are things I always, you know, constantly try to remind myself of. And the path of meditation, you know, travel via minimalism and living simply are things that like put it to the forefront of my mind. You know, it can still be easy for me to forget and like keep my laptop on too long and get a little lost in social media. But that's when I come back and be like, no, this is why I put myself on this path, to remember these truths and to dive deeper into them. And to let the universe do her thing with my life instead of trying to force it into something. Because anytime we're forcing, like, it doesn't feel good and it usually doesn't end well anyway.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's an important piece, is learning to flow. And if something is, you're having to struggle too hard to you know, you're trying to sort of put a square peg in a round hole, so to speak, stop, catch yourself, realize why something that should flow easily. And so I'm going to follow that easy flow. And the other thing that you touched on, you know, is the universe. If I'm here, I'm still breathing, it's going to support me. It always has. You may have had difficulties. You may have had all kinds of things up to this life, but guess what? Up to this point in your life, but in each now, you were able to cope, and you got. And if you didn't like something, well, good. You know, good for you. The fact that change is guaranteed. So, and if you do love something, you know, embrace it to the fullest because it's transient. So be present and enjoy it and see it for what it is, and don't take it for granted. And so I think if you can adopt this sort of perspective, as I've always been supported one way or another. I didn't know what step was next. I couldn't see, 2 feet in front of me. And if I think that I can somehow plan my way out of it and create security. That's the greatest farce of them all. It's an illusion. So how can I move more fully into each moment and into a place of faith and trust that I will always get what I need? And if you can move into that, I'll always get what I need, sort of energy, into that sort of perspective, it just supports it. And of course, the universe is mirroring back what your beliefs are and what do you create more of. It just makes your ride smoother. And so I think that's all such good points. We've covered so many great things here, Anita. I feel like I could keep going on and on talking to you, but we're sort of getting down to it here. And let me ask you this: what is the best way for people to connect with you who want to continue to follow your journey and maybe interact with you? Is it through your website?
Yes, the best way, the best way to stay connected through everything, because who knows where Periscope will be a couple of years from now, is through my website, AnitaWingley.com. It's just my name. There's like free resources there. The other place on social media, Periscope is the one I'm most active on, which is a live streaming app. If you're still new to it, because it's not as it's not as out there as some. It's a blue,
still
white, and red icon. Yeah, it's still pretty new. And then my handle is at Anita Wingley. Everywhere on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well. Sort of whatever floats your boat, you'll find a little bit of content there.
Cool.
But Periscope has definitely been my joy. And then the other thing is just writing. I probably write the most posts on my Facebook because it's easier than publishing on my blog. So yeah, I get there. That's where I sometimes get to dive deeper and just sort of flesh out my ideas and philosophies that I've gained from traveling and meditation.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm going to leave you with one question here, Anita. It's one I always like to leave my guests with. 60 seconds or less. What is the meaning of life according to Anita Wingley?
The meaning of life is just to have fun. Have fun, and as you have fun, you're going to become the greatest and the grandest version of yourself. But I wish, I'm on this journey too. I wish we could all just remember that it's all for fun and it's all for play. We come into this world with nothing and we leave with nothing. So can we please stop trying to compete and kill each other for stuff and just build things that we love, create things, enjoy the moments and that's the journey that I'm on. And if your fun takes you to travel, to meditation, wherever it takes you, just follow that.
Yeah. Well said, Anita. Thank you so much for taking the time to connect with me here. I look forward to following your journey. And, I'm sure our paths will cross at some point, and I look forward to that as well. So keep on doing what you're doing. You're quite the inspiration. And I know anyone listening to this will come away feeling inspired. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. It's been awesome fun to be on this podcast.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes, since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting. Your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.